So if I may begin, I'm going to be reading from this, and any information I release here today, our public information officer can make that available to you, and also any names or information you request pertaining to the inmates that have passed that we're talking about particularly today, he can provide that information. Mr. Lieutenant Kevin Southard. I'd like to welcome my staff here today. I'm here with my Chief Deputy and also my Chief Detention Captain Shane Mullins, along with my other two Lieutenants, Stoltz and Martin. So again, we'll begin. During the month of February 2021, our staff in the Rockingham County Jail responded to 3 attempted suicide incidents. These incidents are tragic, and our thoughts and prayers go out to their families. These particular inmates were confined in a cell by themselves. All 3 had been committed to the Rockingham County Jail for a few days or less under secure bonds. We can provide the names of the inmates, their last names, known addresses, along with the charges and the bond information and court date information upon your request. Currently, at my request, these in-custody inmate deaths are under investigation by the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation. We're required to notify also the state jail inspectors that are with the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. During the jail booking process, that means when a person is coming to our facility, our staff is required to conduct a screening process. This screening covers the following: medical care and COVID-19 screening, mental health concerns, developmental and intellectual disability concerns, substance use disorder, and suicide concerns. Our local public health department has to sign off on an inmate screening plan that our staff and inmate medical staff contract services utilizes. We utilize telepsych services on Monday through Thursday, and on Fridays we have the telepsych services, and we also utilize Daymark services for our mental health support in the Rockingham County Jail. We contract through Southern Health Partners for our inmate medical service, which consists of a nurse who is assigned to the county jail 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, and there's an RN regional supervisor and a doctor that is on call that represents the company when needed by our agency. After our emergency medical support is provided by the Rockingham County Emergency Services and also our local area hospitals. As the Sheriff of Rockingham County, I am responsible for the operation of the local detention facility. Every inmate that is committed to our jail is in either pretrial status or serving misdemeanor time, jail time, and they are all of my concern. Every inmate in our jail is someone's family member and someone who loves them and cares about them. So we want to make sure that we look after their loved ones when they're in our trust and care. I have the responsibility to make sure that regardless of the inmate medical or mental health status or other issues when they arrive, that we have to provide for the safety, care, and custody of all inmates until he or she is released from our facility. All of our jail staff members have been trained in jail operations and inmate supervision responsibilities, which are spelled out by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services jail standards. These are the primary rules that cover many of the aspects of jail operations. All jail staff receive in-service training in first aid, CPR, use of AED systems, and other required safety concerns in jail operations. Although the North Carolina jail standards have mandatory requirements, as sheriff, I have the ability to make improvements that complement jail safety and security concerns as needed. When we experience incidents such as the recent suicide attempts, I look at the existing policies and procedures to make sure they are being followed. I also look at best practices in jail operations and trends that are affecting jails in North Carolina and across the country. The reality in the modern jail system is that more persons are coming into the jails with pre-existing medical, mental health, and substance abuse issues. Jails have never been or will ever be the proper place to treat addiction, substance abuse, or mental illness. We maintain a safe and orderly and secure 232-bed facility here at Rockingham County. I am very proud of my jail administrator, Captain Shane Mullins, our supervisors, and our professional detention staff that I employ. They work hard each day and night to serve Rockingham County and our citizens. I want to thank our county commissioners and our county manager who support our efforts in operating our jail facility. Considering that we have experienced these incidents within the local detention facility, I've also reached out to other different disciplines to ensure that we're doing all that we can do to identify and reduce the chance of an arrestee inmate attempting suicide that is in custody, and also making sure that we are taking care of other required responsibilities in our professional capacities. I reached out to different county partners, including Cone Hospital, Annie Penn out of Reedsville, and also UNCR Hospital in Eden, in a collaborative effort to look at recent trends in the county involving suicides and drug dependency. Together, we are looking at possible solutions to address these trends. We have regular communications with the Rockingham County Department of Public Health, particularly in the area of COVID-19 concerns, prevention, and care for our inmates. I've reached out to our leadership in Rockingham County government, our county manager, about safety concerns that we have and security concerns that we have in our local jail. And I've spoken with my field staff and local police chiefs regarding suicide awareness and prevention as it applies to in-custody arrestees. Because before a person comes to the jail, they're generally arrested and then brought to our facility. It is crucial when our local law enforcement officers have taken someone in custody that if these issues arise that I'm listing, they need to be addressed properly and promptly. And number one, is the arrestee obviously injured, complaining of injury, or in need of any medical care? If so, it needs to be addressed and taken care of. Number two, has the arrestee spoken to the arresting officer and talking about harming oneself and having a plan to carry it out? And number three, we're also asking our chiefs to have their staff, when they have someone in custody, for their own protection and safety, asking them this: has the arrestee consumed any heroin, fentanyl, or methamphetamines within the past 24 to 72 hours? At the time of the booking of an arrestee, it is important that this or any other information concerning the safety and well-being of that arrestee is passed on to our jail staff in the booking office when the person is brought in to the Rockingham County Jail for their follow-up care and proper action. This was discussed with our local police chiefs. This is already being done by our local law enforcement officers, and it's most appreciated. I believe that if these actions are adhered to, that we can have a better chance of identifying an inmate that is at risk of suicide. We're also in the process of receiving training in the area of suicide prevention and awareness through our contract inmate medical service. And I've been advised that also part of our regular annual in-service training covers suicide prevention that is provided every year also. And our detention officers, I might add, I understand they receive 23 hours of in-service annual training. At this time, I'll honor and answer any of your questions. Yes, sir.
Sheriff, what is your gut
Charles, go ahead.
What did your gut tell you about what this problem is?
Well, let me say, first off, there are some HIPAA concerns, so I can't say a whole lot, and these cases are currently under investigation by the SBI. What I can say is this: the trends I'm seeing people coming into our jail facilities. I'm seeing fentanyl on the streets. I'm seeing people die in our communities. We're seeing suicide. We're seeing depression, and we're going through a year of COVID. We're seeing a lot of situations out in our community, but also that can mirror inside your jail. So again, mental illness, drug abuse, those are some issues, and pre-existing medical issues.
We can do a follow-up to that.
But let me say this: what you see on the outside, you can also see in the jail setting, because it's like a small community. Yes, sir, go ahead.
You said ask them if they've done this, if they've done this kind of drug or something. Wouldn't that be kind of a conflict of interest for them to answer that?
I've asked our legal about this, and they said that you can ask. They don't have to answer. But I will tell you this, Charles, in my 38 years in law enforcement, if I deal with somebody out here in the street and they have an addiction, they'll talk to you about it. They'll tell you about it. A lot will. Some won't. But you know what? If you don't ask, you'll never know. And that's the problem, is not everybody will tell you if they have suicidal ideations or thinking about harming themselves or harming others.
But you know, there's another school of thought that says people with addiction should be in jail anyway.
Well, that might be your opinion that you're saying. But I think people with addictions need help. In America, we know that 90% of the drugs come across our borders from Mexico into the United States. supply and demand. We also know we have a demand. We have an addiction problem in America. So we've got to treat the addict, and we've got to slow the flow. So those are two competing issues, but that's another conversation. But again, like I said, the best place to treat a person with addictions is not in a jail setting. The best place to treat a person with mental health issues is not in a jail setting. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Was there any reason for your staff to believe that these 3 individuals were suicidal before they were put in the detention center?
My understanding was there was nothing that flagged us that the person needing special care. However, during the booking process and the screening process, if we see any red flags during that screening process, then we are to put that person in a special watch. And the person cannot be taken off a special watch except by the authority of our doctor. Yes, sir. Question?
Sheriff, so none of those 3 people were under some type of suicide watch or whatnot by your staff, is that correct?
No, sir.
Are there any trends or patterns consistent with all 3 cases that you kind of can link together to find a common denominator?
The only thing I can tell you, I can't, because this case is under investigation, and I haven't got information back from the medical examiner, information back from the SBI at this point, I can say that my understanding, all 3 parties, 2 males, 1 female, all in their 20s, and they were in a single cell setting. However, we do try to transition people at the appropriate time to because of COVID situation, we do have a 72-hour medical isolation. Then the person can go into a cell with someone. But if the person doesn't have any safety concerns for suspicion of suicide attempts or anything like this, the person can go into a cell with someone else. But also, if we have persons that may both have been identified where they're on a special watch, we try to put those persons together. Okay? And then some situations in jails, because of classifications, some people you can't put with other persons just for safety and security. So, but we have what's called a classification program, and you're constantly reclassifying people. Okay? And if we get to a situation where we have somebody we can't provide for their medical needs or other concerns, we also work with Central Prison Hospital down in Raleigh. Of course, when we ship out persons down there, and they're also billing the county, so we try to deal with the situations here, but if we can't provide that level of care and they need it, we're going to try to get them into Central Prison Hospital for their support and care.
Sheriff, you've talked a lot about substance abuse. Did your staff know that these 3 individuals had some kind of substance abuse issue?
I didn't say they did. All I can say is their ages. I can say their sexes. I can give you some additional information. I can tell you what the charges are. But I can't tell you whether or not, because I can't violate HIPAA issues. But I appreciate you asking. Yes, sir. Go ahead, Rick.
Sheriff, earlier you mentioned the number of beds that you have in your facility. Could you tell us how full to capacity you are during this time?
I'm going to be off. I get a daily report. I hadn't had a chance to look at it today, but I'm going to say we're being close to somewhere around 181. We're 181. I was going to say 170. We're 181. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And remember, we have to constantly classify people. Some people are a higher risk area, safety concerns, and then as they're reclassified to a lower level, they can move into the other pod areas, and eventually persons can be in the open dorm area, which is a secure area.
So what's the
I'll get you back. Go ahead.
supervision look like? I guess how long was it between, I guess the last time a said inmate was checked in?
I'm glad you asked that question. Under jail standards, we're required to make so many irregular, they call it irregular checks on inmates. If a person is under a regular watch, they're required to be checked twice an hour at irregular times, and after between the first check and the second check can't be any more than 40 minutes. Okay? If a person's under special watch, they have to be checked 4 times an hour. Okay? After we had the first suicide, successful suicide here, what I did, I implemented 3 checks an hour. So I said, we've got to try to get 3 checks an hour in for a person's even regular watch. Now here's something. Somebody asked the question. Charles, if I can go to him, Charles, go ahead, ask your question.
Well, we know in Henry County that the opioid problem is one of the worst in the United States.
Okay.
That's just the county decided.
Yes,
How
sir.
bad is it in Rockingham County? Can we be real about it and tell the community how bad it's getting out there?
To be quite honest with you, I first came to this county in 1981 as an undercover narcotics officer. People were selling marijuana. Heroin was something you heard in California or somewhere else. Methamphetamine was out west. Over the past 30-some years, things have moved forward. I think with the opioid issue that we saw back in the 2015, prior to 2015 and moving up to about 2017, when we started recognizing that the opioid medication being prescribed and overly prescribed was creating addictions and issues, when that situation started being addressed and a person could not get the medications, oxycodone, Oxycontin, stuff like that, people started shifting to heroin. Heroin's cheaper. Fentanyl's cheaper. Fentanyl's deadly. It only takes, somebody asked the other day, how much does it take to kill somebody? It don't take much of fentanyl to kill somebody. If we stop somebody in a car, they have a baggie with fentanyl in it or something like this, and we get dusted with it, it could affect my officers. Every one of my deputies carry Narcan. Narcan is a reagent or a medication that is designed, it won't hurt you if you're not overdosing, but if you're overdosing on an opioid, it could save your life. We utilize it quite regularly here in the Rockingham County, in our city jurisdictions, our paramedics, our firefighters, and even people that have a family member that may have an addiction can get it from the pharmacies. So I'm grateful that we have Narcan, but what I do worry about is with the heroin, the methamphetamines, and the fentanyl, is what happens when that Narcan is not available. We're going to see more people die.
How bad is it?
It's bad. It's bad. But, you know, we didn't see heroin as bad. I'm going to say over the past 5 years, it seems like it's moved forward. But methamphetamines, heroin, and fentanyl are the drugs that we're seeing a lot now, and not as much the marijuana and stuff like that, or the cocaine. But good question, and I appreciate you asking. Yes, sir.
After the first incident, you said you increased your watches to 3 now.
My advice to the staff is let's try to get 3 checks in for regular checks. Now, here's what I was going to say. Somebody asked me a question yesterday, said, well, Sheriff, if you were able to receive some additional manpower, would it help? Absolutely. We have enough manpower to man the positions that we have, but additional staff would be a compliment. It would be appreciated. Okay? I would appreciate it. But here's the thing. If a person has the intent or desire to harm themselves, they'll find the time to do it. They'll find a way to do it. Unless you set a person in front of that cell 24/7 and monitor that person, if they have a desire to do something, they can do it. And that's a sad thing. That is a sad thing. But we're going to do everything, rest assured, we're going to do everything in our power and our ability, and we'll look at what we're doing and see if there's anything we can do better. We'll try. But we're doing everything we can. We're following jail standards. I think we go above jail standards a lot of times. But again, we're always looking for it to improve. If we receive additional manpower, I've talked to the county commissioners, if we can receive additional manpower, we appreciate it. But it's not a guarantee that somebody won't try to harm themselves. Let me get him real quick. Yes, sir.
Yes, Sheriff. How closely is outside communication monitored? And did y'all have any kind of indication from these people talking with family members, friends, or anything like that?
Still in investigation, so I really can't say a whole lot, but I will say this, is if a person is incarcerated in the Rockingham County Jail, and to my staff, y'all give me a nod if I'm right, we have what's called home wave. If a person wants to communicate with family, they can communicate by the internet. For a fee, they can communicate with their family, they can communicate with their loved one that's in our jail setting. We used to have the family visitation where they could come in and be on a monitor in this part of the building and talk to an inmate, their family member, on the other side. They had the ability to write letters. They had the ability to communicate. We've got a good communication process. We also monitor the phone calls. We monitor the information. I can't go any beyond that as far as security and safety in the jail, but I would just tell you is we have good communications if someone wants to talk to the loved one, but we also monitor that communications. And again, like I said, the case is still in investigation. The case is still in investigation by the SBI, so I'm going to have to stop at that point. But good question. Yes, sir, Charles.
You know, I always tell my audience, you're real transparent, you always talk to us. Most PR people would say never come out and do a press conference if you tell all this happened at one time.
Well, let me tell you this. All you have probably been in the news business for a little while. When we're out in the public, if we have a situation, and it's like I say, it's tragic, it's sad, but if someone decides to end their lives and does it out in the public, you generally don't cover it. When it happens in jail, you may not cover it. But it's serious to us. And when I see a trend, and I see people die anywhere, I have a concern. I want to see what's going on. I want to understand it. I want to make sure we do everything we can do in our power to stop it. We're going to have people out on the outside committing suicide. It's a reality. We're going to have people out on the outside that have mental illness. That's a reality. And we interact with people with mental illness all the time. And it's not always a bad interaction. But there are some persons, due to depression, abuse, drug abuse, mental health issues or something, that they may be at their rope's end and decide to end it. And it happens. But again, we're going to do everything we can to make sure our staff and our personnel that work out in the field and working with our partners with the police departments, we're going to make sure that we have the awareness that if we can pick up on something to help save a life, that's what we're going to do. Because when I first got into law enforcement nearly 40 years ago, I was asked the question, why are you doing this? This is because I want to help people. I want to save lives. And that's why we're having this conference today.
Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that more manpower would be helpful, so I guess taking a look, a standard rotation, how many officers would be employed at that moment?
I can tell you we have 38 officers assigned to the jail and 9 officers on the night shift, 10 officers on the day shift. And then, of course, you have support staff, administrative.
And then how uncommon is it for a suicide here at the Rockingham County Detention Center?
Well, we haven't seen anything. This particular jail went in operation in 2010. 6 months in, we had an inmate who hung himself. Okay? We haven't had any issues in 10 years. And then we had this spike in February. And it gravely concerns me. Because even one is one too many.
Sheriff, are there cameras? Like, would someone be able to sit at a desk and look at cameras to be able to monitor inmates, or is that not possible?
There are certain restrictions. There are camera systems where you can monitor persons that are on special watch, where you can do the monitors. That's something we're looking at. But as far as if you've ever been in a jail before where they got the pods that go down like the rows like this, and the individual dorms or rooms are connected to it, you have a general camera that's looking in those areas. I don't want to go too much into the camera system, but let me just say this, is our facility is monitored 24/7 with cameras, but there's some settings that you can't have a camera. But if we can, I'm looking at that, and I appreciate you bringing that up.
Sheriff, did these 3 individuals, when they died by suicide, did they all use a similar method, or did they know each other before coming into the jail?
I'd rather not go into method on the situation right here. Again, still under investigation. I would say their attempt. I've told you the commonality that I can say, which is basically they're all in our facility. They're all in for a few days, but I can't comment on the methods, and I can't comment on any prior drug issues or anything, or if there was any issues. Okay, but I can tell you what they're charged with. I can tell you, that information.
Did they all come in? Were they all arrested?
No, different times. Yes, sir. But they all were only in the facility a few times, and that's one thing that you see a lot of times when persons come into a jail facility, is the first 48 hours, 72 hours is critical. If you detect, if you picked up on a red flag, but if you don't know, you only know what you know, and the only thing you can do is respond to what you do know. Does that make sense? Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So you said you can speak to the charges. So were any of them charged?
I can't hear you, sir.
Did any of them have drug-related charges?
I'd have to defer to my public information officer on any charges, but you're free to get that information. Just make the request.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
How did this impact, you were speaking obviously inside the jail, it's like a community, so obviously I imagine this has some type of impact on other inmates and
Absolutely.
The officers.
Absolutely. Part of the responsibility of being a detention officer is besides, being like that cop walking the beat, but you interact with inmates. Now with the COVID situation, that's created, just like we've seen out in the public, that's created a little bit of impersonalness. You don't have that quite, like now, people don't like to shake hands. We want to have the mask on. Sometimes we don't recognize, we're not sure who we're talking to. But the point is our officers do interact with the inmates. If they detect, if they pick up on something that something's not going on, something right with the inmate, or if there's a concern, they bring it to the attention of the supervisors, then we address the issue. So they are walking through those. They are making contact. They are having visual. They are having communications with the inmates, even now with the COVID situation. But again, like any community, some people talk to you, some people won't. But believe it or not, inmates do communicate with the jail staff, and they have mutual respect.
Sheriff, your detention officers are not deputies, is that correct? So there's a different level of training?
Well, I was going to tell you, you have sworn detention officers that are certified. You have some that are in training before they go to the school, and then you have sworn officers. A lot of your transport officers are certified sworn deputies, but they're detention officers because they may handle somebody that's arrested, have to take them to an area hospital and provide security and safety for that person while they're off site. But so yes, we have certified detention officers and certified detention officers that are sworn. Gun toting, okay? Yeah.
Are any of them on leave? Have any of them been moved or placed on some type of leave due to this incident?
No, sir. No, sir. And I want to be very clear. Looking at what we've got at this point, our deputies, from my chief deputy, detention officer, captain, to my lieutenants, to my sergeants, to my staff, is they've done their job. They've done what they're supposed to. We're conducting our own investigation from the policy and procedure side. The SBI, I've called in on anything that might be out of the ordinary, but I can say this, is they've done their job, they've done what they're supposed to, and I'm very proud of them. It's just a tragic situation when you have someone lose their life that you're responsible for.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You were making comparisons between the outside community inside and the community inside the jail. I know that there's a significant stigma around suicide and mental health, even outside of jail cells. Is there a stigma inside the jail amongst the population in jail, and is that a hindrance to you being able to effectively find people who may be suffering from mental illness?
You know what? People will talk to you more than you think. And in an environment, in a jail environment, it's kind of closed environment, we have some pretty good communications, I think, to say that. But also, our medical staff, they're trained. They communicate. They do med calls. Like I said, we have telepsych. We have support from a psychologist with Daymart. We also have persons that come in from Daymart that come in and talk to and assess our inmates that are exhibiting some type of concerns that we might have in the mental health area. So we want to make sure that we address those issues because, again, the responsibility of us in our jail setting is to make sure that we make sure all our inmates are safe, they're secure, we're protecting the community, we're protecting the inmates while they're here in our facility until they transition to the next or release. So, it's like a community. If we pick up on something, we report it, we make sure we address it. If they know to go to another source, we may have to go off-site, take them off-site. But we want to and bring them back for us. But we want to make sure that we look after our inmates while they're in our facility. And I think we do a great job. But back to the original situation, the sad thing is, if a person has the intent and has formulated a plan to harm themselves, they're going to harm themselves. They'll find a way, they'll find a time. But we're going to do everything we can to pick up on and reduce that chance and prevent it if we can. Kevin? All right, guys, thank y'all very much. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, guys. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
The last time you had to...
Yeah, it was in 2010.